Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education, Government of Karnataka. Siddhartha, an Indian novel by Herman Hesse, is prescribed for 4th semester BSc Generic in English, Bengaluru City University. I'm Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, Government First Grade College, Malleshwaram, Bangalore. In the previous session, we went through the critical analysis of the novel. As we have seen, the novel has been divided into two parts. In the previous session, the part 1, which contains of 4 chapters, has been critically analyzed. So let us have a look at the contents of this session. First and foremost, learning objectives, followed by session outcome, recap of the previous knowledge, and later part 2, critical analysis, and finally, recapitulation. The learning objectives are of this session to comprehend the division of the novel. See, this is very important in the sense an author has the freedom. He has the freedom to divide the novel as according to his own thinking or according to some sort of concept that he has in his mind. So we can see that the novel has been divided in this way, part A and part 2, for a reason. And as part A has already been critically analyzed, in this session, we'll be looking at the critical analysis of part 2 and interpretation of the 8 chapters. Part 2 consists of interpretation of 8 chapters. At the end of the session, the student will be able to comprehend the division of the novel, the critical analysis of part 2, and also the interpretation of the 8 chapters. Let us try to recapitulate. In the previous session, part A, which consisted of 4 chapters. Before I forget, one second. Before I forget, part A of the novel consists of 4 chapters, while the entire novel consists of 12 chapters. Look at the division there. The author has not divided the chapters equally into 2 parts. While part A consists of only 4 chapters, part B, the one which we are going to discuss on in this session, consists of the remaining chapters out of the 12. So why this division? As we saw in the part A, the 4 chapters reflect a concept of Buddhism. Now let us try to recapitulate. In Siddhartha, the protagonist's life parallels little of Buddha's history, even though Siddhartha, our protagonist, participates in holy sacrifices, meditation practices, and discussions with adult Brahmins. He is not satisfied. Satisfied in the sense he is unable to get that answer for what he is looking for. He seeks enlightenment, otherwise also known as inner peace, and he feels that he has learned all that he can from his teachers and books. No wonder he was feeling so restless. So he seeks permission from his father to join the Samanas. They are the wandering ascetics. The self-denial of the Samanas isn't enough to enlighten him. He has learned that timelessness cannot be found apart from the self, rendering the Samanas' teaching useless for him. Siddhartha and his best friend Govinda have spent 3 years with the Samanas. At the end of it, they both are not satisfied, and they also learn of a man named Gautam Buddha who has achieved enlightenment. And when both Siddhartha and Govinda go in search of Gautam Buddha and meet him, while Siddhartha recognizes the Buddha's holiness, he also realizes that enlightenment must be experienced and not taught. Siddhartha realizes that all religions offer specific formulas for reaching enlightenment, just as all teachers offer knowledge couched in terms of their own experiences. And so he cannot rely on any individual religion or teacher in his search for enlightenment. So at the end of part A, the 4th chapter, Awakening, encapsulates the revelation Siddhartha has learned from his experiences in the preceding chapters, and that is, enlightenment cannot be reached by relying on teachers or by ignoring the world. Now let us have a look at the part B, which we are going to discuss. The part B or part 2 consists of 8 chapters. And why is it 8? Because it resembles the 8-fold path to nirvana. According to Lord Buddha, there are 8 ways through which you can achieve nirvana, and a pictorial representation is given here. Right view, right intentions, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness. So no wonder part B is it contains 8 chapters which are symbolic of the 8-fold path to nirvana as prescribed by Gautama. The fifth chapter is titled Kamala. If you observe the titles of the chapters, you can see that the titles aptly describe in one word, or it tries to sum up the essence of what is it that the entire chapter contains. Now we saw Siddhartha at the end of part 1 or at the end of chapter 4, wherein he has come to the realization that no teacher can help him achieve enlightenment until and unless he wants to achieve it. So Siddhartha continues to appreciate his surroundings and decides to always obey his inner voice and seek experience. He comes to a river. He befriends the ferryman. He stays for the night at the ferryman's bachelor pad and dreams about Govinda. Now, in the dream, Govinda, his friend, appears wearing a yellow robe. He approaches Siddhartha and hugs him. And 2 seconds later, Govinda transforms into a woman. This dream is the first indication that Siddhartha is on the verge of sexual exploration. The ferryman the next day takes Siddhartha across the river and tells him about learning from the river, which is the most beautiful river ever. Siddhartha expresses regret that he cannot pay the ferryman, but the ferryman has faith that Siddhartha will someday return. Siddhartha continues walking until he reaches a village. Everybody avoids this weird ascetic. After some time, he comes to a stream where he meets a young woman washing clothes. He feels sexually attracted to her, though he has never touched a woman before, and as a result, he gets cold feet. It's not that he's being weird or sexually deprived. It's just that he's realized instead of avoiding all the joys of the world, let me try to see what is it that it is going to help me seek achieve enlightenment. His inner voice says no, and as a result, he leaves. Siddhartha arrives at the outskirts of a city. He sees a gorgeous woman ride by on a sedan chair with a whole entourage of servants. He makes eye contact with her and she smiles. He learns that the woman's name is Kamala and she is a famous courtesan. He bathes, shaves, and arranges an appointment with her. And he also asks Kamala, when he meets her, to be his friend and teacher, specifically in the art of sexual healing. Kamala finds it ridiculous that an ascetic from the forest, wrapped only in a loincloth, has come to her for a sexual education, because an ascetic is somebody who is related to or who is considered as somebody who refrains from sexual activity. And here we find this a sannyasi or a ascetic who has come to a courtesan, and as a result, she finds it ridiculous. So Kamala tells Siddhartha to get a job, lots of money, nice clothes, some perfume, and some nice presents for her. Then maybe he can try talking to her again. Siddhartha is not disappointed. He's not, how do I say, discouraged also. Siddhartha tells Kamala that he is determined to have her and that the Samanas have taught him how to single-mindedly focus on a goal. And here, in this context, he has made up a goal of achieving or attaining Kamala. As a result, is going to single-handedly pursue that goal. From chapter 5, there is a radical change from his exploration of the spiritual world. Till the first 4 chapters, he was in pursuit of the spiritual world by avoiding or shunning all the worldly pleasures. But from chapter 5 onwards, we can see that he tries to explore the material world. The root word of the name Kamala is Kama. Kama is the Hindu god of love and desire. So both the characters Kamala and Kamaswami represents material desire. Siddhartha, in an attempt to please Kamala, composes a poem for her on the spot, and Kamala is mightily pleased. Although hungry, Siddhartha feels it isn't right to beg for food now that he is no longer a samana. The next day, he goes to see Kamala. She has set up a job interview for him with a wealthy merchant due to his literacy skills. You have to remember that those days, the entire novel is based in 600 BC. Those days, people who could read and write were a rarity, and as a result, Kamala felt this ascetic might have a chance with a merchant. Siddhartha's decision to immerse herself in this world will awaken aspects of himself that he is forced to be quiet for a very long time. It completes his break from the world of spirit when he has his hair trimmed and shaved. He's finally noticing his physical body and changing himself so that he can better fit into the material world. Chapter 6, Amongst the People. Siddhartha goes to see Kamaswami, the wealthy merchant. The merchant questions him about his skills and needs. Siddhartha has no needs and argues that his ability to fast is an asset. He is not troubled by the lack of food, and therefore no one can force him to do something for food. It has also taught him patience. When the merchant sees that Siddhartha can read and write well, he offers Siddhartha both a job and shelter. Siddhartha begins to live a good life: food, baths, clothes, and he learns quickly and is well respected by Kamaswami. However, he looks at his job as a game. His real interests lie with Kamala. Kamaswami keeps trying to get Siddhartha to be more passionate about business, but Siddhartha remains indifferent. Somewhere we can see that though Siddhartha is involving himself in the materialistic world, somewhere only his physical essence seems to be involved in the physical in this materialistic world, while his inner soul somewhere seems to have drawn that line, and as a result is not completely involved in this corrupt materialistic world. Siddhartha visits Kamala daily and she instructs him in the physical act of love. Although he takes great pleasure in the people around him, his experience as a samana keeps Siddhartha from fully empathizing with them. This is that one quality which sets Siddhartha apart from the others. He sees their lives as if from a distance. Their pains, discomforts, and problems seem completely trivial to him. Please remember this point. This changes at the latter end of the novel. Siddhartha feels understood and satisfied only with Kamala, and he sees that Kamala has the same stillness that he has. He points out that this quality has nothing to do with intelligence, but everything to do with the resolving to have inner peace. Kamala, though a courtesan, always made sure that she did not involve herself completely in the corrupt or the materialistic world, and as a result, they both, the ascetic Siddhartha and Kamala, have something similar between them. Kamala tells Siddhartha that he is the best lover she's had. She wants to eventually have a child with him. The lovers note that because they share this special sanctuary and distance from the normal ups and downs of life, they can never really truly love each other the way other people do. Chapter 7 is titled Samsara, and as we are all familiar, the word samsara is nothing but the usual life that we see on the world with all its domestic concerns, trials, and tribulations. As years go by, Siddhartha accrues more and more wealth. His samana like qualities begin to fade. They are replaced with more materialistic qualities. He grows increasingly greedy, troubled by everyday problems, and he also starts feeling unhappy, but he also starts feeling trapped by pleasure, pain, and a sense of hatred. Siddhartha engages in a lot of gambling as a way of expressing his hatred of wealth. He feels himself and Kamala both aging. He suddenly starts associating sex with death. One evening, Siddhartha drinks heavily, watches the dances, and he feels profoundly nauseated with himself. Finally, he falls asleep and dreams about a songbird that belongs to Kamala. Kamala had this songbird which she kept in a golden cage in her residence. Now, we have to wonder why this particular songbird appeared in Siddhartha's dream. In the dream, he finds the bird dead and he tosses it into the street. After his dream is broken, he becomes scared that he has just tossed out all the goodness in himself. Maybe they always say that there is a saturation point or a breaking point. Maybe now Siddhartha has reached that point when he looks at his own action in the dream, wherein he throws a bird. Just because the bird has died, when he throws it out, he realizes that he has crossed all limits. In despair, Siddhartha recalls his life. He tries to remember the moments when he felt true joy and a sense of direction. He concludes that nothing in his life is of value to him. Even the pleasures of his shared passion with Kamala have worn off. Everything has been a game to him. He leaves his home and his riches, but out of concern, Kamaswami sends people to look out for Siddhartha, thinking that he has been captured by robbers. But then Kamala does not search for him. On the contrary, she knows that Siddhartha is and at heart a wandering samana. She releases her songbird from its cage. When she realizes that Siddhartha has tried to pursue his own spiritual instincts, she knows that there is no point in getting him back. But at that point, we learn Kamala is pregnant with Siddhartha's child. This fact we, the readers, are aware of. Siddhartha is not aware that Kamala is pregnant with his child. Chapter 8 is titled By the River. Siddhartha heads for the forest, determined to go back to his life of wealth. Determined, sorry, never to go back to his life of wealth. He is depressed and he keeps wandering, and he approaches the same river where he met the ferryman years ago. It is as if life comes a full circle. In utter despair, he clings to a coconut tree along the bank, dreams about dropping and submerging himself into the water, and then he sees the water as mirroring the emptiness within him. About to slip into the water, the word Om emanates from his soul. Siddhartha realizes that destroying his body will not end his suffering. He sits down, thoroughly exhausted, he falls asleep. And when he wakes up, he has a sense of rebirth and he repeats Om to himself over and over again. Behind him, Siddhartha notices a monk in a yellow robe. It is none other than Govinda. But then, ironically, Govinda has not recognized Siddhartha, but he has merely sat beside him while he slept in order to protect him from snakes. Later, Siddhartha identifies himself and explains he has left the world of wealth and is now on a pilgrimage. Govinda leaves to get back to being a monk. Siddhartha forces himself to think. He has no possessions and thus feels joyful and childlike. This is very important in the sense all the material possessions we start feeling the love that we have towards all the material possessions. Once you lose all of that, there is nothing to hold us back. That is that exact feeling that Siddhartha has now. He finds himself amused at the course his life has taken and sees his path reflected in the flow of the river. He concludes that in order to return to himself, he has to experience profound sorrow. He realizes that life as a samana fueled his intellectual growth and arrogance, allowing him to thrive rather than to perish. He remains entranced by the beauty and flow of the river. Chapter 9 is titled The Ferryman. Siddhartha is painfully hungry and he finds the ferryman Vasudev he met years ago. He asks for a ride across the river. He has no money to offer the ferryman. Remember this? Earlier also, those many years ago, when the ferryman had left Vasudeva at the banks of the river, at that point also, our Siddhartha did not have money to pay him. It is as if a sense of deja vu here can be seen. But then he asks if Vasudeva will accept his fine clothes. The ferryman is confused, but he agrees. Siddhartha asks if he will move in with Vasudeva and learn about the river, the ferryman's apprentice. Apprentice means a student. Vasudeva graciously invites Siddhartha to stay in his home and offers him a meal. Siddhartha eats a simple plate of bread and mango and recounts his life to Vasudeva. He is astounded by the ferryman's profound ability to listen. This listening is a skill. The talking is an art, but then a listening part that actually requires a lot of skill. Vasudeva remarks that he cannot teach, but then he can help Siddhartha to learn from the river, to learn how to be a devote and to listen. Vasudeva rarely speaks, but the men work hard together and focus on listening to the river. The river teaches the two men about life. For instance, one day, Siddhartha realizes that the river exists only in the present. It is everywhere at once, upstream, downstream, at the sea, and at the source. Life is in the same way. Siddhartha realizes that his existence as a boy and his existence as an old man are not separate. Everything has its existence in the present. In the voice of the river, Siddhartha hears the holy word Om being repeated over and over again. Vasudeva and Siddhartha live joyously on the river, listening to its stories and finding silent companionship in one another. Travelers begin mistaking the two for brothers. One day, Siddhartha learns from the traveling monks that Gautama Buddha is gravely ill and will die. Meanwhile, Kamala has joined the followers of the Buddha and is making a pilgrimage to see the holy man. She rests on the riverbank with her son, who is tired and wants to eat. While resting, Kamala is bitten by a snake. Vasudeva hears her scream and brings her home, at which point Siddhartha immediately recognizes Kamala and then realizes that the boy with Kamala is his son. They clean her wound, but she is badly poisoned. Siddhartha calms his crying son. When she regains consciousness, Kamala recognizes Siddhartha but sees how profoundly he has changed. She dies before she is able to tell Siddhartha that finding him was as good as it would have been to find Gautama Buddha. Siddhartha sits with Kamala for a long time after she dies. While he suffers, the river offers him a sense of unity. Siddhartha becomes peaceful. In the morning, Vasudeva helps him to construct a funeral pyre. Chapter 10 is titled The Sun. Siddhartha's son The young boy grieves for Kamala, his mother. Siddhartha tries to instill consideration and respect, although he realizes the boy has been spoiled by a wealthy lifestyle. Siddhartha struggles to try to win his son's love and acceptance with kindness, but his efforts are in vain. His son came to the river out of necessity, not desire. Siddhartha wishes desperately to protect his son from pain and suffering, but is reminded by Vasudeva and the wisdom of the river that one cannot teach certain things. They must be learned through experience. Although Siddhartha understands the concept, his love for his son is overwhelming. He cannot bear to let the boy go. Siddhartha's son, on the other hand, feels trapped by his father's excessive kindness. After a huge outburst, the young man steals money and a boat and runs away. Siddhartha and Vasudeva construct a raft to rescue the boat. Vasudeva advises Siddhartha to let the boy return to the city, but Siddhartha wants to bring his son back. Siddhartha searches the forest. He enters the town sad, but no longer worried, and stands near the gate where he first saw Kamala. He relieves the moments of his life and feels a sense of profound emptiness. Life really has come a full cycle here. He crouches by the gate in meditation on a hot, dusty road. A monk from Kamala's garden places two bananas in front of him, which it seems is a generous meal. But Siddhartha is deep in meditation and doesn't notice. Vasudeva finds Siddhartha. Siddhartha greets him happily and they return home. Neither speaks of the boy. So the last remaining link that Siddhartha had with the materialistic world also is broken now with the eloping of the boy. Chapter 11 is titled Om. Siddhartha now starts feeling warmth toward the ordinary people whom he ferries across the river. Rather than the contempt that he previously felt, he now sees their troubles as understandable and honorable. Siddhartha considers the possibility that his awareness of the unity of the universe too is mere childishness, but this idea doesn't bother him. Although Siddhartha grows wiser and wiser, he still feels wounded by his son. One day, Siddhartha intends to go into the town to look for his son. Then, Siddhartha remembers that he himself wasn't exactly a model son. He had left his own way, his own father, the way his son left him. He hears the river laugh at the repetition of life's patterns. Realization usually makes us see where exactly we stand in life. Siddhartha returns to his hut and tells Vasudeva of his experience in the town where Vasudeva has found him and about his intention of going into the town earlier that day. Siddhartha recognizes later that Vasudeva is none but God himself. Vasudeva brings Siddhartha out to the river and tells him there is something he still has not heard. With Vasudeva's guidance, Siddhartha listens intently. For the first time, he hears all the voices of the river as one single continuum of all life. Siddhartha feels his soul merge into unity. Vasudeva touches Siddhartha on the shoulder. Now that Siddhartha has reached enlightenment, Vasudeva plans to leave the river and enter into the unity of all things. Vasudeva takes off for the forest, leaving Siddhartha as the ferryman. The last chapter of part 2 is titled Govinda. Govinda is still traveling with the men in yellow robes. They look up to him now because he is wise and old, but Govinda is still unsatisfied and seeks enlightenment. That's why they say just because you're old, it doesn't mean you are, wise enough. But then Govinda is still seeking enlightenment. Govinda hears about this wise ferryman and decides to go talk to him and is absolutely surprised that the ferryman is none other than his good old friend Siddhartha. Siddhartha doesn't realize this. Siddhartha tells Govinda that because he is orienting himself toward a single goal, he is missing everything. Remember, this is how Siddhartha also was. He too was blindly pursuing the goal of attaining nirvana while he missed the journey. Siddhartha is arguing that because Govinda is focused so much on the search, he cannot find what he is searching for. When Siddhartha identifies himself, Govinda is startled. The following morning, Govinda questions Siddhartha about his attaining nirvana and how whether he follows a doctrine. Siddhartha explains that although he has had many teachers, yet he follows no doctrine. Siddhartha explains his belief that although knowledge can be communicated, wisdom cannot. He argues that in every truth, the opposite is also true, that time is illusory, that suffering is necessary to learning, and that there is no division between the world and perfection. Siddhartha uses a stone as an example for Govinda. The stone, because of its profound nature, is everything, and everything is enough. Siddhartha does not dwell on ideas and does not fight to understand reality. Although Siddhartha's words contradict Gautama Buddha's, that doesn't matter. Words are meaningless. Govinda is confused. Before leaving, he asks Siddhartha for words of wisdom. Siddhartha tells Govinda to kiss him on the forehead. Govinda kisses his friend's forehead and suddenly sees a continuous, unending stream of faces and people and images of painful and joyous things all shifting into one another. After kissing Siddhartha, he is unsure if a single second or eternity has passed. Govinda identifies Siddhartha's smiling, radiant face as that of the Buddha and bows down in veneration. So at the end of the chapter 12, we see that Siddhartha has attained enlightenment, and as a result, his friend Govinda, when he sees Siddhartha's vision, he too, in a sense, also achieves enlightenment. To recapitulate, part B consists of the following chapters, which were discussed in detail just now. Chapter 5, Kamala, introduces the character Kamala, who is a courtesan. Siddhartha approaches Kamala to teach her the art, to request her so that she will teach him the art of love. She introduces him to Kamaswami, a wealthy merchant, and as a result, he is able to work and also accumulate wealth, which in turn will please Kamala. Chapter 6 is titled Amongst the People. We can see here how Siddhartha's Samana-like qualities are leaving him. He's involving himself more and more in the corrupt materialistic world. Samsara, as the title itself suggests, shows Siddhartha right in the middle of all the domestic trials and tribulations. At the end of the chapter 7, he comes to the realization, or he starts feeling nauseated with himself. He realizes that it is time to let go of this corrupt materialistic world and return to the spiritual world. So when he returns to the river, chapter 8 is titled By the River, where he meets the ferryman Vasudeva. Initially he tries to make sure that he gives up his life, but then the river also stops him. In the chapter titled The Ferryman, Vasudeva, the most important character of the novel, is introduced to us, somebody who is a more proficient listener. And then he teaches Siddhartha about how to learn from the river. And then chapter 10 once again tries to reconnect with the past, wherein we see Kamala coming in search of Gautama along with a son. The son is Siddhartha's son too. And when Kamala dies accidentally due to a snake bite, uh, Siddhartha tries to convince the son to stay with him. But the son is not interested. He steals money and a boat and he elopes from the place. Chapter 11 is titled Om, where we can see that Siddhartha is comfortable. He tried searching for his son, but then he came to the realization that, like how he had left his father, now his own son has also left him. Maybe he has to make his own way in that sense. So he starts living there, trying to help people. And at one point, he realizes that Vasudeva is none but God himself, and Vasudeva helps our Siddhartha to attain nirvana or enlightenment. Chapter 12 is titled Govinda, wherein we see the old friend of Siddhartha returning to him. And at the end of it, we can see Govinda also is able to have a glimpse of all the enlightenment that Siddhartha has accumulated over these many years. References used. Thank you.